Good afternoon. I will call to order this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper for March 18th, 2025. It is 1:30 p.m. I welcome all of Council to the quorum room. We are absent Councillor Keller-Harrington at the moment. She is just momentarily away dealing with important issues for the Evergreen Foundation, of which she is our designated representative and chair. Welcome to all of municipal staff who have joined us, and welcome in particular to our really large gallery today. Ms. Consfruit and her grade 6 class. Welcome to all of you. Good to see you here. Glad you're learning about local government, and it's not so many years until you may be able to take part in municipal government. So pay attention, learn well, and come back and serve your community if you wish, in either capacity on council or working for the town in administration, which is equally important to the well-being of our community. So thank you for attending. I begin by acknowledging that the municipality of Jasper is on Treaty 6 and 8 territories, as well as the Jasper House Métis District. This land is the traditional territory, meeting ground, gathering place, traveling route, and home for the Denza, Assiniwatchee Winawak, Assiniwatchee Niha, Nihayawak, Anishinaabe, Secwepemc, Stoney Nakoda, Mountain Métis, and Métis. The municipality of Jasper acknowledges the land to honor the relationship Indigenous people have with this land, to remind us of our responsibility and obligations to this place and to Indigenous people, and to affirm our accountability to address the ongoing impacts of colonization that continue to affect Indigenous people. And today I give some special significance to the fact that members of the Jasper House Métis District are meeting in our community today to deal with issues of importance to them and their connection to our land. I will turn now to the agenda. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other alterations to be made to the agenda? Mr. Gibbon.
Your worship, if there weren't any from council or I suppose there's still time for that, the administration wanted to request in-camera HR update at the end of it. Also.
That could be added as agenda item 10.3, as we have an in-camera session scheduled in any event. So thank you for that.
Just add to that, it seems that we're meeting, it's same topic, but probably a different discussion. 10.4 HR committee update. That's all HR.
Are there any other proposed alterations to today's agenda? If not, I would look for a motion, please, to amend the agenda by the addition of items 10.3, an HR update report from administration, and 10.4, a council human resources update. Deputy Mayor Melnick, thank you for that motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And may I have a motion then to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended? Councillor Demoda, thank you. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Agenda item 3, we have 2 sets of minutes for approval today, beginning with the regular meeting minutes of March 4th, 2025. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If there are none, I would look for a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the March 4th, 2025 regular council meeting as presented. Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And we have also then for approval the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of March 11th, 2025. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Again, seeing nothing, may I have a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the March 11, 2025 committee of the whole meeting as presented. Councillor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That was carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, delegations. We have no delegations on the agenda, but at this time, during our regular meetings, we welcome input from members of the community on any item on the agenda. So if there is anybody in the gallery who wishes to speak to any item on today's agenda, you are welcome to do so. There is a microphone ahead of the class. If any of you want to come up and speak to anything, or any of the other community members that I can see at the back of the gallery, if you wish to come forward and present to council, this is your opportunity to do so. I see no one rushing to the microphone. I will move then to agenda item 5. We have correspondence, 3 pieces of correspondence. We begin with a letter from the Jasper Pride Festival Society. And we have presenters coming forward. Is one up?
Yeah, I know. Just give me a second. This isn't my first rodeo.
Me neither, but I've only been to one.
If any of you are unaware, over the years, Mayor Ireland has built up a pride themed wardrobe, small but incredibly meaningful symbol of his support. I don't know proper protocol. I lost one, we'll get it. Jasper Pride wanted to help you rebuild that piece of what you lost. We want to present you with tie cup, one cup sleeve, the other one's down there somewhere, and a rainbow pocket square. A token of our appreciation of your wavering support. So that was, yes.
It's, thank you for that. It's very much appreciated, and I might, as I have done on national television, become a blubbering fool for a moment.
He's gonna get it.
I'm around with him.
Yeah, make it.
It's so funny that you said that to me right then.
Yes, yes. Just. Just as Lynn regains her composure, and I still have a bit of mine. What she just whispered to me was that it was serendipitous that just before the meeting, I met with Lynn and exchanged a few words and mentioned that in the fire, I had lost all of my Pride apparel, buttons, ties, and everything. And I had no idea how I was going to replace any of it. So I thank you very much.
We got your back.
For this.
All right. That was so hard because I worked so hard on what I want to say next about not crying and keeping my emotions contained. Oh, come on. All right, so your worship, Mayor Ireland, council members and municipal representatives. Thank you for your time today. My name is Lynn Mona. This is Madison Goy. We're here to speak on behalf of Jasper Pride Festival Society, working in collaboration without Jasper, to reiterate our request for the renewal and temporary relocation of Jasper's annual Rainbow Crosswalks. Each year, these crosswalks remind our residents, visitors, and youth that Jasper is a place where everyone is valued and supported. But this year, their presence carries an even deeper meaning. As we continue to rebuild from the devastation of the wildfires, we are embracing our 2025 Pride theme, Phoenix Rising. Like our theme, Jasper is not just recovering, we are rising. Stronger, more united, and more committed than ever to being a town where all people, including 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals, feel safe and welcome. The world around us is shifting and not for the better. We are witnessing an alarming rise in homophobia and transphobia. Communities are being silenced, identities have been erased, and safe spaces are being threatened. At a time when others are trying to push queer people back into the shadows, Jasper has the opportunity to stand even taller, to reaffirm our commitment to diversity, and to say without hesitation that we will not allow hate to take root here. This year, we are asking for the crosswalks to be temporarily relocated near TD Bank's current space. TD Bank Group has been a steadfast ally, investing in this initiative year after year. After losing their building in the wildfire, they remain deeply committed to our town, and we believe keeping the crosswalks near them is a meaningful way to recognize that commitment and the role in helping making Jasper a leader in inclusivity. Additionally, we would like to reaffirm our request from last year for rainbow colored flowers to be planted in a larger planter between Lucia's Gifts and Baxter's Gifts. While the crosswalks may move temporarily, these flowers will serve as a lasting, beautiful tribute to inclusivity throughout the summer season. They would provide a meaningful and continuous reminder that diversity and belonging are more than seasonal statements, but also a part of our fundamental values of Jasper. These crosswalks and initiatives like the Rainbow Flower Planter are not just paint or decoration, they are a promise. A promise to our queer community that they are seen, a promise to visitors that Jasper is a place where they can feel safe and celebrated, and a promise to ourselves that as we rebuild after the wildfires, we do so with inclusivity at our core. We are grateful for the ongoing support of the municipality and appreciate your role in helping us bring this to life once again. With your approval, Jasper can continue leading by example, showing that even after loss, we can rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate the presentation as always. Are there any questions from councillors? Or comments? Councillor Miller.
I'm always trying to wait. But I appreciate that and thank you very much, Lynn and Maddie, for coming forward today. It's nice to have you here. And you know, it's again, I don't know if it's serendipitous, but I think it's great for, you know, our younger people in our community to witness this, and I think it's important. So it's supposed to help me out with these curveballs here. I'm still trying to adjust emotionally, but you know, what a wonderful gesture. One of the things that came to mind when I saw you doing that and saw the colorful stripes on the tie in the pocket square was that, you know, oftentimes throughout the winter time, we kind of lose the effect of the importance of those colors on our crosswalks and stuff. And I was thinking, do we have an opportunity to maybe at least start with where the TD Bank was and that crosswalk, to have either posts on each side in the candy stripe style with the rainbow colors on each side, so that throughout the year, you know, it's still there, you know, it's not covered with snow and all that. And we can be reminded, and it's there for us, and it's not covered up. And I think it's something that still adds to the enhancement of inclusivity and brightens up the town. So, you know, I don't know if that was thought of, but it just came to me now when I was thinking about that. And I think it would be nice to have that book ended.
There was, oh, is it already on? There is, I love that idea. There is some rules and regulations around signage and stuff like that for crosswalks. So I know, like, even our rainbow crosswalks on the app, it cannot be facing the way of the cars driving. It has to be turning the other way. So as long as there wasn't bylaws and things like that to do with crosswalks, I think that would be something amazing.
I think it's worth exploring anyway.
There are lots of options. I've seen them in, like, Hamilton has a couple of really great pedestrian facing signs, so it's not affecting vehicles coming through or distracting that way. But there have been communities that have done year-round representation like that, and we could look into options that would work for both parks and the Muni.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer.
Thank you both for the presentation. I am the chair of the Communities on Bloom committee, and I will make sure that that gets the idea of the rainbow flowers in the planter is raised there on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland, and thank you, Lynn and Maddie, for coming today. And I acknowledge your commitment. And as a community with a visitor-based economy, it's really important that Jasper is known as a safe, inclusive, welcoming place. So I feel the LGBTQIA+ community looks for that when they travel. Maybe our province isn't that, but our community certainly is.
I have a couple of questions, if I may, but I might begin with a question for administration. So there are 3 requests for support from the municipality that is beyond council support. That's administrative or operational support. And I take it, if there was a concern, administration would let us know with respect to traffic control support, assistance with permitting, and the designation of, I take it, Ms. Riddell as a liaison. Those are all confirmed by administration.
Thanks, Your Worship. Administration has worked with the group for a number of years, and so these are all pretty typical of the municipality's support in the past. A couple of maybe small nuances, along with the relocation of the crosswalk closer to the primary sponsor. Administration is happy to work with the organization on that. We're also, I think, we'll want to have a conversation about the potential of using Commemoration Park for the actual festivities and flag raising. I think traditionally the only flag poles the municipality has had have been at the fire hall, which is a great and central location, less so for actually an event. And so we have a fantastic place for events at Commemoration Park. So we'd like to work with the group to see if that might be as good a place for flag raising, maybe even better, again, recognizing that for all the ceremonial parts of flag raising might be some good opportunity. But that's a nuance. All the rest of the supports that are requested are typical of what administration would expect.
Thank you for that. And then for Ms. Wonk and Matty, the letter that we received spoke about the potential for signed letters of endorsement from neighboring businesses. Have you had an opportunity to canvass that?
We did drop off letters. There's one, because in that crosswalk, there's 2 homes. So I've already reached out to one homeowner and they're on board. I'd sent an email to the second one, but I haven't heard back yet, but all the letters have been distributed. And in conversations, everything was positive, so I'll await their written consent.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. And the last item for me is just an observation. Crosswalks do not fare well. Just because there's turning traffic, I was at intersections, and they get beaten down. I have noticed that other communities have gone to pride sidewalks. And I just wonder whether you've looked at that, where they only accommodate pedestrian traffic for a stretch of a block. And with a major sponsor, it would be easy to imagine where a pride sidewalk might go rather than a pride crosswalk. Just so that they last longer and are more visible for a greater period of time.
I think what Jasper faces with our crosswalks not lasting as long as they might is we are tied to parks and not being able to use what paint in the city they use. They use a plastic-based paint and it does last throughout the season and just easily repaired with touch-ups, whereas ours has to be completely repainted year after year due to our hands being tied by parks regulations. So even if it was on a sidewalk, I think it would hold up better than the road, but we would still be tied to those, the water-based paints. We're open to any of it.
All right, thank you for that. If there are no further questions from councillors, there is a proposed motion. Councillor Waxer.
The council approved the flag raising request from the Jasper Pride Festival Society.
We jumped somehow. We jumped somehow from 5.1 to 5.2. So I think we are on
Oh, sorry.
agenda item 5.2.
Should
And
I-
we'll go back to 5.1.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'll go then too. I was a bit confused as I was reading. That council approved the non-standard crosswalk request from the Jasper Pride Festival Society and Out Jasper.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Is there any debate on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So thank you again for your presentation to both of you and
Thank you.
Commissioner McConnell.
Thank you.
I did want to just, if any of you are interested, because I don't think that any of you as counselors probably see what goes into sort of, what we put out to the community and our sponsors. So I do have sponsorship packages, if anybody wanted to have one, just to look at what goes into it. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. No problem.
I was just gonna pass this around.
Okay. Did you want to get some?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. When you're ready to go. Thank you.
All right, there was a slight deviation from the agenda. I called 5.1, but we had 5.2. I'll begin again. There was a slight deviation from the agenda. I thought I had called item 5.1, but we addressed 5.2. So let us return to agenda item 5.1, which is the request from Jasper Pride Festival Society for a flag raising. Is there anybody here that intends to speak to that matter, or can council make its determination from the letter on the agenda? Deputy Mayor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship. One thing that I would like to know is we've indicated a date for the flag raising, but it may be too early for a time, or if that's been determined, it might be helpful to have that listed as well, for council members to put in their calendar.
Go ahead, Mr. Gibbon.
Your Worship, the organizers have identified the date that they'd like to have the flag raising. They identified it as April 4th, so administration can certainly incorporate that into the council agenda and make sure that they get up to council members to participate.
Deputy Mayor Melnick?
Thank you. If I misspoke, I meant to ask for the time on that date.
Your Worship, that part's not in the letter, but obviously administration will work with the organizers to make the plans and ensure that council gets appropriate invitation.
And in the earlier agenda item, Mr. Gibbon, you referred to Commemoration Park, and this letter of request is specific to the Emergency Services Building where this has typically been done, but I appreciate there are issues there, particularly drawing a crowd to the apron of a fire hall without knowing when the alarm might go off. It's always worked, but it's never been entirely satisfactory. And so have the applicants been advised of a potential change to Commemoration Park?
Thanks for the question, Mayor Ireland. We have been in touch with the group and explained that the location at Commemoration seems like a great fit, and they seem really receptive. So it's in progress.
Thank you for that. Any questions from councilors? Councilor DeWitt?
Questions, I just, I like the date of April 4th, just because of history and inclusivity, and it being the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated for supporting, you know, a good cause. So to me, it's appropriate, and I think it's good timing.
Councilor DeWitt?
I don't mind making the motion if everyone else is ready. The council approved the flag raising request from the Jasper Pride Festival Society.
Thank you for the motion, Councilor DeWitt. Any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. thank co-chairs of the Jasper Pride Festival Society for that piece of correspondence. That takes us to agenda item 5.3, which is a letter from the officer, the minister responsible for Prairie Economic Development Canada. Well, that was at the time Minister Dogood, who is now minister responsible for the environment, but not necessarily for Parks Canada as I did the case. But in any event, for the record, a copy of the letter subject to the will of council. I think that it is for information, not for response. That takes us to agenda item 6, new business. 6.1, directors. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Waxer.
I just wondered if you would like the motion that council receive the correspondence for information.
Thank you for that. I would, and they do. And if there's no debate, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, and that letter is received for information. Councillor.
Yeah, I want to check in with our students here just to make sure how everything's going. I know these meetings can be kind of dry and stuff. Yeah, we're getting a thumbs up over there. All right, is he the representative for your group? No, we're good. Anyway, it's good. I like to see the enthusiasm, and you know what, as dry as this might come across, sometimes we really appreciate you being here. I think it's really special for us to have you. So you know, again, I think it's kind of it's a bit long sometimes, but we're really happy that you're here. So thank you for very much for making the effort.
Thank you, Councillor Demota, and if I am now back in order, I will return us to agenda item 6.6, the director's report from community development, and we have Ms. Riddell as one of the acting assistant directors here to present that report, as I understand. Ms. Riddell.
Thanks, Mayor Ireland and all the council. There's a report in front of you here for the Community Development Department. And I'll just draw your attention to a few things to highlight. And I've tried to pick out a couple of things too that maybe our audience would resonate with a little bit as well. The recovery specific stats, I've actually got the updated numbers to today. So we've opened 261 new client files between January and yesterday in recovery. And we've opened 107 new files since the start of March. So that's quite a large uptick since February, when in all of February, we opened 70 files. We are seeing an increase in recovery service access. Just for some interesting stats around who we're seeing, 76% of folks are hospitality workers. 90 to 100% of folks were helping or living in Jasper, although we do have some clients that have been displaced. 66% are citing that they did not have insurance. 27% are newcomers to Canada, and 84% of the people that we're seeing are employed. But what's going on is they're citing that there's not enough hours, they're having trouble making ends meet. So financial food insecurity continue to be high. In terms of other things to highlight, some exciting news, we've secured 3 more years of federal funding through Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada to continue the Immigration Partnership Program here in Jasper, as well as settlement services, which is services to folks that are newcomers to Canada, immigrants from other countries. Something else that's really exciting, of course, is the completion of the Recreation Facilities Renovation Project. The grand opening was a big success. The facilities are open. People are excited. In terms of staffing, we are seeing turnover for sure, and it continues to be a bit of a challenge across all of the branches within community development. Some staff are leaving the community while others are transitioning into new roles within the MOJ. For service trends, there were 8 hockey tournaments successfully hosted in the renovated arena between January and the end of March. The U15 provincials are coming up this weekend, and Female Hockey Day in Jasper was also a huge success. One thing to note is the changes in Alberta Child Care Subsidy and the framework for childcare funding under the federal provincial agreement has resulted in some lower income families at Wildflowers Childcare. They're going to be receiving a higher invoice than before in April. So that's quite a large impact for some folks here in Jasper. And a couple things under communications and engagement. We're going to be working with a partner to develop an app that will serve as a welcome platform for newcomers to Canada that are settling here in Jasper. Assistant Director Daniel did apply for the Alberta Government Building Blocks Capital Grant to expand our existing childcare facility by 22 spaces. This is just in anticipation of seeing growing demand and wanting to be able to meet that for the community. Just some pieces I wanted to highlight. I'll do my best to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dell. Questions from councilors? Deputy Mayor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the report, Mr. Adele. Reports that come to council often are a reflection of what has occurred over the past 3 months. And I'm wondering if you yourself or administration might be able to comment on something that may be of interest to our gallery today. When we get out of winter, unfortunately, the fire delayed our skateboard park completion. And I'm wondering if administration is in a position to give a bit of an update, understanding, of course, that this is not necessarily when we get reports, like I say, they're more looking at what has occurred. I think it'd be interesting to see where we're going to again enhance the recreational facilities in our community.
Mayor Ireland for Councillor Melnick. I'm happy to provide a bit of an update, recognizing that Assistant Director Daniels isn't here today. After the wildfire last summer, obviously construction on the skate park was halted. And since that time, we've been working closely with the volunteers in the community at the Skate Park Committee, who've been leading the effort to get that project built. And their contractor that they hired to actually build the project to restart construction this spring. My understanding is that the skate park builder is planning to have this as one of their first projects this spring. So we would expect that it would be done early in the summer and ready for use. One of the challenges that we are seeing, and municipal administration is working with the contractor to see if there's any ways we can support them, is actually a challenge that we're going to be hearing a lot about. It's actually housing for out-of-town crews who would have to come and do the specialized work on the skate park. So the town's administration and staff have already been working with the volunteers and the contractor to restart that project. Right now, the timeline and goal is to have it ready by the early summer.
Thank you for that question that came a little bit out of the blue, and thank you, Your Worship. I will have other questions later, but I'll have other councillors who may wish to ask questions.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Melnick. Councillor Councillor.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'm just delighted to see here that the men's shed is now up and running, and I'm hearing very positive things in the community. I believe they have a number of community projects underway, and members are joining all the time. I just think this is a great step forward for the mental health of our senior gentlemen, and I'm delighted that it has worked out for everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Boxer.
Thank you, and through you to Lisa Riddell, or Acting Director Lisa Riddell. I had 3 questions. One was around the IRCC funding renewal. I know there was some concern around the potential for the reduction in the amounts that would come to Jasper because of the reduction in federal limits on immigration. And I wondered if that played out at the time, or if we'll see our levels of service for new Canadians stay the same.
Thanks for the question, through Mayor Ireland to Councillor Waxer. Our original application was for 5 years, and the reduction is represented by contracts across Canada being extended by 3 instead of 5 years. And so that's what we're seeing in terms of the reduction. The day-to-day service levels for newcomers will remain the same. And in fact, we are going to be able to extend some services virtually into the community of Hinton. So some real positives for settlement services. And for immigration partnership, we were able to secure more resources to support really engaging newcomers in the planning of programs and services that are intended to serve them. So really being able to engage newcomers more through subject matter expertise and things like that. So generally, it seems really quite positive, and the reduction is in the length of contract.
Thank you very much for that. The second question is, I know in the past we've had the national level service funded through Jasper, and I wondered if that was continuing at this time.
Through Mayor Ireland for Councillor Waxer, that application was submitted through the Toronto Local Immigration Partnership, this round of funding. And so I can follow up and just see the status of that, but it will no longer flow through the municipality of Jasper. It will through like a sub-agreement with the Toronto LIP, but the original application won't go straight to the municipality.
Okay,
But
it will flow through, continue to flow through us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And my third question was, as a result of attending the community conversation for children, I wanted to speak to the item you referred to around childcare subsidy. I found what I heard at the community conversation quite alarming, that while our province has launched the $15 a day childcare program that has meant a significant decrease for middle and upper income families, but the simultaneous cancellation of the childcare subsidy program has meant a significant increase for the lowest income families. And I think it's alarming and very concerning, and probably very much so, more so even than ever for the community of Jasper, where people are already facing some huge challenges.
Thanks, through Mayor Ireland for Councillor Waxer. That is something that we're keeping track of closely, and in terms of folks that are coming in, it does seem like it's going to be impacting a number of families in Jasper that used to receive subsidy to offset the cost of childcare services with Wildflowers Childcare. I did do a little bit of digging in the last week. It's not going to impact subsidies that out of school care age children and families would normally access, and that's an important distinction. It's for the 0 to 5 age range. And the childcare services team did report to me that I think it's just under 10 families will be receiving a larger bill than they have in past, and 4 to 5 of those families will be seeing an increase of just over $200 a month that they are needing to pay. So it's quite significant.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I have a few questions. I'll ask a couple first and see if the rest of the panel wants to go. My first question, you said 261 outreach cases between January and now. Are those new cases? And what would a normal year look like? I'm assuming that's quite a bit higher than what outreach normally sees.
Thanks for the question. Through Mayor Ireland to Councillor Hall. Pre-fire, we would open between 8 and 10 new client files per month at Community Outreach Services. The recovery numbers was where I reported 261 total new clients. That does maybe include clients that were outreach clients prior, but then they're going through the recovery intake to see if they can qualify for those fire-specific supports as well. And so just the increase we were seeing right when we first re-entered is really sustaining, and we've seen a real blip, a real jump up in March. Yeah, compared to February.
Thank you for that. My other question around staff turnover, are you noticing it's due to housing, stress and wanting to leave, or is there any kind of common denominator with that?
Through Mayor Ireland to Councillor Hall, it's a real combination of factors. So all of the things you've listed, in some cases it's housing, in some cases it's just a change. There's been some movement to different departments within the MOJ, just lots of new opportunities now as well post-fire that actually creates opportunity for some staff. And then some that are also leaving community. So a real variety.
If I may, I've got a few more, but I would have you to open the floor if anybody else wanted to.
If I might interject and just follow up on your last question, Councillor Hall. With respect to the challenge of staff housing, which is a challenge felt by every employer in the community, and we are not different. You've identified primarily recreation and childcare as hit most heavily in your report by staff, as I read it. In the event that the housing challenges are insurmountable, what is the intended course of action? Will it mean a reduction in service levels, or will the staff that we do have be well, I don't want to say required, but encouraged to take on more of a burden? And I understand that has been happening, and with the staff that remains, many of them are overburdened because the workload has increased tremendously since last summer, and yet the work still gets done. But I'm wondering, from an organizational perspective, would we work to get more from our few remaining employees, or would we look to reduce services?
Mayor Ireland, I'll maybe answer sort of on behalf of the organization, because it's not just in these two areas. You're seeing it reported here because this is the community development areas report. But we are seeing that as a challenge across lots of areas of municipal services, like a lot of businesses. We've had employees that have been displaced, and we're facing challenges getting enough people to do all the work. In the community development area in particular, we don't have as many options because some of the services have specific regulations that say how many employees you need to have to provide the service. So for example, lifeguards at the swimming pool, you need to have a certain number of lifeguards available at all times to be able to oversee all of the people. And there's sort of ratios that say how many swimmers you can have and how many lifeguards you need to have. And then of course there are regulations on how many hours you can work a lifeguard. So that's an example of a service that if we couldn't get enough employees, that we might have to limit the number of hours that the pool is open. The same in the childcare area. There's very specific rules around how many children can be in the daycare in a room, and how many daycare providers there need to be along with those children. And it ranges in relation to age of the children. The lower the age of the children, the smaller number of kids you can have along with their daycare provider. So that's another area where we don't have the people, even if they're willing to work more, we can't meet what are called ratios in order to be able to provide the service. Additionally, in all the other areas of the organization, we need to be very cautious about overworking our staff because ultimately that can have negative outcomes as well, where if people are working too long, they may become extra tired, and they could also impact their health. And so as an organization, we're trying to ensure that we're watchful of that and mindful of our staff.
Thank you. I appreciate that response, and I think it's necessary that we work to manage public expectations on both of those, both service levels and expectations on individual staff, because we cannot burn out everybody and expect to still run a community. So I appreciate the fullness of that response, and I hope that it's picked up by the community. Thank you. Sorry to interject, Councillor Hall. return to you.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and just a comment, I'm really happy to see that programming has resumed and is in full swing, including rec room, because I look into the gallery and I see a whole bunch of new rec roomers. I think you qualify once you graduate grade 6, is that correct? Who's excited for rec room? Okay. My next question is around the Jasper Community Team Society, and I can appreciate if you might not know this, but you know, just hearing comments in the community and questions around, do you know how much they've raised and how much have they funded residents through outreach?
Thanks for the question through Mayor Ireland to Councillor Hall. I appreciate the question, and I won't speak for the Community Team Society in terms of how much they've raised, but they have transferred funding over to community outreach services to be distributed through recovery outreach. They've transferred $362,000 for the calendar year 2025 to be spent throughout those 12 months. If I can just add one quick thing, there's a factor you asked about, you know, what were the factors for why people were moving and changing jobs, and rent increases is one of those, and I didn't mention that earlier, so thank you.
And my very last question, with our recent activity center upgrades and the opening of our space, I think it would probably serve our community and visitors to be available again for camps. I know the challenge was always housing and where to house them. There has been precedent set in housing campers with the summer games and winter games, and they typically just stay in school gymnasiums. All the boys stay in one, the girls stay in another. And I bring this up every time there's an update from CD, but before the end of this term, I'd love an update on our joint agreement with the school board and our municipality, because I think that I know the missing piece. And again, this back to the beginning of this term when we didn't want to house campers anymore, and I still stand behind that. I don't think that the municipality should be in a position to rent rooms essentially, but we could have a really beautiful joint partnership with the school board and house campers in the big, huge gymnasiums that sit beside our activity center. I'd love to see our ice in all year long. I'd love to see volleyball camps back. And again, I think the challenge is where to house the campers. And I see a solution with the 2 gyms, but I know since COVID, I'm just not sure where that agreement is at, but I think it would be great to get an update on that.
Mayor Ireland, in response to Councillor Hall's question, so I believe Acting Director Daniels has been working a bit on that file. I know, we need the school board to also be ready and interested to participate. I believe she's been in discussion, so maybe a motion to add something like that to the motion action list, just so it doesn't get lost. We can return with a report on the status of the joint use agreement with Grand Yellowhead at a future meeting.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, I can make a motion now, or I can wait until council has had enough, or ask other questions. Okay.
Deputy Mayor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just have a couple of questions for clarity. The Jasper Local Food Society Market, this would be commonly known as the Farmers Market. And will that continue then on Wednesdays? Is that the current plan?
Through Mayor Ireland to Deputy Mayor Melnick. That is the farmers market. They are going to be relocating, and I would have to confirm the exact day of the week that they'll be open, but I'm happy to share that information once I have it.
Thank you, and encouraging to see the numbers for the community dinners in and around the 450 people per week. And unless I heard otherwise, that this would be the last month that we'll have community dinners. The last Sunday, being the 30th of March, will be the last community dinner this year.
That's correct, Deputy Mayor Melnick. March 30th will be the last one, hosted, co-hosted with the Red Cross and the Jasper Community Team Society.
Thank you for that additional information.
Councillor Calagranti.
Thank you, Mayor, and just to follow up on Councillor Melnick's question. Do we have a big uptake from our community in Hinton coming to the community dinners? Because I know Red Cross put a bus on a Sunday night to go back and forth. I'm just curious.
Thanks for the question through Mayor Ireland through to Councillor Keller MP. The use of the bus was relatively low, but I think for the folks that did use it, it was very appreciated. It was very thoughtful. Interestingly, with the community dinner numbers, we've seen an almost to the number exact consistency with 2023 numbers, which is quite fascinating because we have seen far fewer residents here in Jasper this year compared to last year. So you can see that there's still a very, very high demand and a desire to connect and break bread together.
Councillor Voda.
Thank you, your worship, through you to Ms. Riddell. Thank you very much for the presentation. And just while we're on the topic of community dinners, I just wanted to clarify, and sorry if it's repetitious. Has the Red Cross supported all the community dinners throughout the winter this year?
Through Mayor Ireland to Councillor Demota, the Red Cross has indeed through a community grant supported the community dinner program. So that includes the cost of the coordinator as well as the cost to actually buy ingredients. The folks that are preparing and serving the meal are still volunteering, and we have incredibly continued to receive tremendous amounts of donations from the community, even though we've said, you know, the Red Cross is taking care of it this year. And so that's been very uplifting as well.
Well, that's even better news to hear that. And one of the things that I just wanted to add, and I know that this doesn't get picked up by every media stream around the world, let alone around the country, but you know, when disasters happen and you know, donations start coming into the Red Cross, sometimes you know, there's that idea that some of those funds get washed out in the works, and you know, it is a big operation to run, but I will say that, you know, I can't speak specifically for myself, but for our community, the response from the Red Cross itself and the amount of effort and work that they've been putting into our community since our disaster has been enormous and great and well appreciated. Just wanted to say that. Everybody's still awake out there, right? Okay, just making sure. You put your hands up a little bit, get the blood going. I know we don't have you all day, but all right. See you next.
Councillor Waxer.
I apologize for going back, but I wonder through you, Mayor Ireland, to Acting Director Riddell, if you believe that some advocacy on behalf of the council to address the childcare subsidy issue would be worthwhile or valuable.
Thanks for the question, through Mayor Ireland to Councillor Waxer. My own perspective is that it could be an opportunity certainly for council, but I would also like to check in with groups such as like the Friends of Jasper Childcare, or, you know, groups that are really specifically looking at those issues.
Is there one student fell asleep on the bus?
That is something too, I should add, I can connect with the acting child care manager, Turcott, as well, just on that, and potentially whether it's a desire of council, but return to council with something that's just a bit more specific to that opportunity if desired.
Thank you for that. I was considering two possibilities, which was one, just a letter to the minister, a copy to the premier, but also potentially a resolution to the Alberta Municipalities Conference. So we'll keep that in mind and maybe bring it back at the next meeting. And I just wanted to say I'm taking this so seriously because I think we have so many families that are already impacted by rising housing costs, rising food costs. And our economy really relies on people who are paid at the lowest level to make beds and wash dishes and many of the other things. So I think it's critical in our context to ensure that these people who are very vulnerable are looked after.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Dell? If not, I would look for a motion that council receive the report for information. Councillor Kelleher, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Hall, do you wish to make an additional?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. If I could make a motion to direct administration to bring an update to council on a joint agreement with the Grand Yellowhead Public School Division. Does that work? Okay.
And from administration's perspective, just blank as to time is fine. It's going to go through. Thank you. Any debate on that motion? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Dell, for that report. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, Jasper Recovery Coordination Center Progress Update. Director Fark.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, members of council. Once again, happy to present to you this week's JRCC update. As usual, we are advancing works on many fronts at the JRCC, and we are very pleased to report that we are making good progress on pretty much all fronts. In regards to interim housing, as of March 15th, 72 households have moved into the units, the interim housing units here in town. We are continuing to advance the work out at Marmot Meadows, where we anticipate occupancy there starting April 1st. And we anticipate rolling move-ins between now and sort of end of April, early May, before we will reach more or less full occupancy of all the units we have been able to mobilize to this point. There are some additional units that will trail, some that will come in May and some will come in June that will be placed here in town. Those are the Corcan units, but we anticipate that those will be filled up more or less immediately once they are deployed. In total, through the interim housing program, we anticipate that we will have been able to accommodate approximately between 320 and 360 households will have been accommodated through the interim housing program. Unfortunately, there remain a number of households that we have informed this week that they are unlikely to receive an offer of housing this spring. That is approximately 120 households that we have sent out messages to that, due to the demand and the available inventory. Having said that, as the JRCC, we are continuing to explore options to bring additional units. So the notices that were sent out were based on the confirmed number of units that we have or that we know are coming. However, there are ongoing initiatives to see if we can secure additional units. And if there are, those people who were informed that they would not necessarily receive an offer this spring have also been informed that they will remain on the wait list. And then as additional units become available, we will be making offers according to the prioritization matrix. In regards to debris management, 99% of permits have been issued for debris removal. There were a few properties that were remaining. We have actually, Parks Canada has been in direct contact with the property owners, so we have contact with all properties. So there are no properties for whom there has not been at least a contact with Parks Canada. And so we are optimistic that we will be able to close out that program. We remain more or less on schedule for the debris removal to be complete in May. There may be a few properties that trail slightly beyond that, but nothing substantive. The post-debris confirmatory sampling, the first samples are now starting to come through. There have been some challenges and delays with the process around the testing and the responses or the confirmation from the labs coming back. We are working with the contractors and with Parks Canada to try to find ways to expedite and address any of those concerns. However, we do want to make very clear for council and for the community that while the post debris removal confirmatory sampling is taking place, residents can move forward with applying for the development permit. Those processes do not have to occur in sequence, they can occur in parallel. So you can actually apply for and receive your development permit, even if your debris removal permit has not been closed out. The only obstacle will be you will not be able to receive your building permit until you have your confirmatory sampling. So that is another way that we've been working with Parks Canada in order to be able to find solutions and expedite the process for Jasper residents. That brings us nicely to the joint town rebuild and where we are with that. So 200 pre-application meetings since October, over 1,300 phone calls and emails. There have been 17 new planning staff added to the Parks Canada department, since July in order to supplement the capacity there. And there have been 78 development permits approved since August, and a number of those have been the fire-related permits. More details are available in your report. In regards to social recovery, the first cohort of the Pathfinders program have now received their training, and it was very successful and very well received. 2 additional cohorts are planned, one for next month and one for the following month. We are making maybe some small adjustments to the program for the cohorts based on the experience from the first pilot, but in general, it was very, very well received. And we are continuing to look for funding sources to sort of implement and support the full scope of that program. In regards to the needs assessment, as previously indicated to council, over 800 households were selected at random to complete the initial assessment. We received 367 responses, which is 46%, which is actually excellent. That allows us to have a representative sample. The importance of a representative sample, once again, is it allows us to ensure that all demographics and all members of our community are sampled and reflected, and it eliminates the risk of sample bias or selection bias that comes in if you open it up just to the public, because only certain people will self-select to respond to the survey if it is just open generally to the public. So we have a representative sample, and we are doing the analysis of that work now. However, due to community interest in the survey, because we have completed it and we have a representative sample, we have now opened it up to the entire community. So all community members are now welcome and can respond to the survey. And then what we will do is we will just keep the data sets separate. We will analyze both and we will use both in order to inform the programming going forward. But it is important to keep the data samples separate. In regards to economic recovery, of course, there was the recent announcement of a $1.8 million federal funding for the community or commerce continuity initiative. This is very good news. Work has started on all 3 components of that program. So that includes the pop-up village, and the industrial pop-up park, and then the laydown and construction laydown zones within town. So those are all being advanced at this time. There are some additional staff resources that were a part of that grant program. They are fully grant covered, and so we will look to recruit and bring those folks on board to help support this program for the busy summer season. One quick update on the business lunch and learn series. Due to some scheduling and capacity issues, we've actually had to delay the first one. So it was initially planned to take place on March 27th. We are now targeting April 3rd for the first lunch and learn. So we apologize for the change, and further messaging will go out to the businesses very soon. That more or less is the summary from the JRCC for this week. I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director Fark. We will begin with Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your report. My concern is still with permitting and how that's all been unfolded. And I totally agree that the cleanup is paramount, and it's great to see that 99% of development or demo permits have been issued. I guess, I'll ask a couple questions throughout this, but it's great to hear that there's 17 new staff in that office. Although at my count, yes, there may have been 78 development permits approved since the fire. Many of those are exterior and interior renovations. At my count, there's 6 single family, or not single family, actual rebuilds dating back to about December that are actually the numbers of that were affected by fire. There's 9 variances that have been approved, and that's counting back till about December. And then, you know, throughout the development permit list, there's like many demo permits. So I guess the development officers that are issuing demo permits are now moving on to development permits, and we'll probably see that speed up quite a bit, because I myself been tracking 2 or 3, they're not my applications, but they're about 2 months out just for variance requests. And so, you know, I'm very concerned that that's like now, and now we're gonna see this big rush of permits, and it's already, you know, 2 months out from a variance request response. Still very concerned that we don't have the capacity to deal with the influx of development permits coming in spring.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Wilson. So the planning department of the MOJ, or Urban Design and Standards Department, sorry, very important correction, is working together with Parks Canada, first of all, to set some service standards around timelines and expectations. And then we are looking at mobilizing as much capacity as possible to address the permits. It is in fact all of the same people who have to do the work. So the same people who have to manage the debris removal permits are the same ones who have to process the development permits. Some have come in so far. We are starting to see some turnover of those, and we do expect the rate of that to increase going forward. The reality is that there is not more capacity that can be brought forward at this time. So Parks Canada has maxed out their ability to recruit additional staff and bring additional resources. We do have the resources from the Urban Design and Standards team that is also working in support of that work.
Your worship, if I may, Director Sanders is with us remotely, so she may have some comment about how things are going with the sort of rebuild and permitting from her perspective and her interactions with the Parks team, which, you know, as a reminder, everybody around the council table knows, but that authority still lands with Parks. But I know that Director Sanders and her team have been working closely, so she may have some additional insights.
I think CAO Given and Director Fark have said enough. I'll leave it at that. We're working very closely together to constantly be finding improvements to the process and the results too.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my request would be, yes, we're talking about expediting timelines and that type of thing, but have we been tracking, or has Parks been tracking kind of that how long, or what would they suggest would be an appropriate amount of time to allot to a development permit to building permit stage? I know it will vary about how quickly the applicant reacts, but are we suggesting 3 months from development permit application to building permit? Or are we suggesting 6 months? And how does the team feel? Are we actually tracking those applications?
Through you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Wilson, my understanding is Parks' expectation pre-fire and now is that within 20 days that they would review an application to make sure that it's complete. And then an additional 20 days is to make a determination on the actual application itself and either approve it or let people know if there's changes that are needed. My understanding is the most important thing an applicant can do is make sure that the application that they send into Parks is complete, and all applicants can meet with MOJ staff. So that's Lucas Sherwin and Marley Pollock. And there's a website link on Parks Canada's website that's very easy to find that you can book. You can drop in and meet with them for a virtual meeting or in person, or you can book time with them, and they'll spend time with applicants to make sure that their application
Director Sanders,
is complete.
there is
Yeah.
something going on with your.
Okay, I'm gonna switch my Wi-Fi
Sorry,
settings.
Director Sanders, your audio is breaking up.
Okay. I will reorganize my internet.
I may.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Definitely understand the process and having a complete application and that type of thing. I'm only speaking for my colleagues and the builders outside of Jasper. With there is a large concern about capacity and you know, myself feeling it, my colleagues feeling it. There is a long delay, and that will just delay housing starts. And so yeah, whatever we can do, and I know we are. I know the group is doing this, but I just have to continue to voice my concern about the timelines.
Mayor Ireland, if I could make a request to Councillor Wilson, if you can actually provide us with an email with details of the application and the timeline that they have experienced, it's helpful for us to have details because then we can follow up on specific files and understand if there was a particular cause for the delay. And as Director Saunders has indicated, 20 days, that's 20 working days. So in total, we would expect about 8 weeks, assuming the application is complete. And so there is the opportunity to have the pre-meetings with the planning staff to ensure that the application is complete as possible.
Thank you for that. I won't share details. I don't think because of one shouldn't see priority over others. I just speaking on as a whole with individuals, builders that I've been speaking with. And so, but
Thank you for that. If you have no further follow-ups, Councillor Keller-Rampe.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'd just like to follow up on the commercial side. I see a lot of work being done on the SO and the Petro-Canada station being cleaned up. Just this upcoming summer, I'm wondering, is there going to be a pop-up gas station or will they be completely just, you know, we had 2, but I'm just worried about the influx of visitors. The 4 gas stations were so busy and the 2 that we have remaining are right in the center of town. And I'm wondering if they're where we are at the gas stations you're building, will they be open this year or if they're going to do a pop-up over in the industrial area for commercial? Right.
So unfortunately, there are specific regulations around fuel stations. And the existing or the pre-existing sites that were damaged, they are likely going to have to excavate the tanks and replace. So it is very unlikely that that you will see a reopening of those in time for the summer season. In fact, I can be almost certain that they will not, and they have not brought forward any applications for permits that would have allowed them to meet that sort of timeline. Similarly, temporary fuel stations would be very, very difficult to accommodate and to meet the regulations around that. So the unfortunate answer to your question is we are likely contained to the 2 fuel stations that remain in town as being what will be available for the summer season.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland, and thank you for your report, Director Park. My question is around, so I know you can get a development permit before your debris removal permit's closed. You cannot get a building permit, but can you apply for a building permit before it's closed?
I will look to Director Saunders to confirm that. My understanding is no, that the building permit cannot be issued until the debris removal permit is closed.
But can you apply for it and get the process started?
So generally speaking, and again, I will look to Director Saunders, but if you have your development permit issued and approved, the time from development permit to building permit is actually fairly short. Director Saunders, would you care to weigh in?
Sure, through you, Mayor Ireland, to Councillor Hall. I will triple check with Parks. My understanding is you could apply for the building permit, but you're not going to have it issued until such time as the cleanup is completely finalized. I'll confirm. And how was the sound?
The sound was sketchy, but I think we got the answer. And if you can hear us, what we heard from you was that you will check and confirm. In the absence right now of other questions, sorry, just saw that, but I will go ahead. On this same issue of the a lapse of time between permits, and I do appreciate your explanation that things can proceed in parallel, not necessarily sequential. But the confirmatory sampling is becoming an issue, the time that it is taking. Your report indicates that residents are encouraged to utilize laboratories that offer shorter turnaround times, but I don't think the public knows who those might be. And I wonder whether there is an opportunity to engage potentially federally regulated or provincially regulated laboratories rather than private industry laboratories in these circumstances. And again, it's just anecdotal, but I heard this morning a property that was just tested and they were told 3 months for the confirmatory sampling. And if it happens to come back revealing that there is something to deal with, then work will have to be done. That presumably could happen quickly. But again, another 3 months for confirmatory sampling would be untenable for many people to get in the ground. So are there any options that we can offer residents to assist them in finding laboratories, potentially not private laboratories, that could assist?
The answer to that, Mayor Ireland, is somewhat complicated. Parks Canada has explored the availability of other laboratories. The challenge is not the fact that there are not other laboratories available. The challenge is whether or not the contractors have an incentive to go with other laboratories. And mostly it's a financial incentive. So this is a classic example of how the market functions. So the leaseholders have hired contractors. The contractors are responsible for the debris removal and the post-debris confirmatory sampling. Those contractors have gone with the most cost-effective means of getting that sampling done. There isn't an incentive for them because in most cases, the contractors doing the debris removal are not the same ones who are responsible for doing the rebuild. And so there isn't necessarily a financial incentive for those contractors. So we have done some communication on our website, on the Parks Canada website and through social media, and we will continue to do more to try to educate the public that they can have a conversation with their contractors and see if there are ways that they can expedite. There are other labs that are available and there are other labs that can do the work quicker. The challenge is that we as government and particularly as the regulator, as Parks Canada, they cannot instruct people, leaseholders or contractors, which vendor they choose to use for the work. So there's a challenge there where we can educate, we can promote information that there are other potential labs, but it's up to the leaseholders to work with their vendors, their contractors, to determine what is the best combination of cost effective and timeliness. And so it is a complicated situation. One thing I will say though is that it is not necessarily the case that if a sample comes back indicating some degree of residual contamination, that additional removal of soils, for example, is required. So Parks Canada has communicated and is open to taking a risk mitigation approach. So if the consultant comes back and says, this is what we have found, and here's how we are proposing to mitigate that. And as long as that mitigation is reasonable, and it could include things like, the installation of a foundation over the residual contamination is sufficient mitigation to ensure that there is no risk to public health, then there may be an ability to move forward in that way. That would of course require the leaseholder to agree to that condition, and there would have to be some language around that in the permit condition. So Parks Canada has demonstrated a flexibility and a willingness to find creative solutions so that it is not necessarily the case that you would have then a stack of additional work and then additional sampling, etc.
Thank you for that complex issue made simpler with that explanation. Thank you very much. Councillor Demoda.
Yes. I guess I'm sure that the CEO Given might be able to answer this, and I know that we spoke recently on this. First of all, through you, I just wanted to thank the JRCC in particular. Mr. Fark, I know that I ask a lot of hard questions every week. You're off the hook for me. And a lot of that is, it's just coming from the community and me just trying to like clarify some miscommunications that are out there. This week, just kind of addresses some of the questions that came out following the Parks Canada annual update meeting, particularly for residential camping. The sites haven't been made available yet. There was discussion there at the forum that I understand that potential areas that might be available, and then that's going to come out with instructions on what's going to be open and how to apply for that. I think my question next for council is, you know, the opportunity to allow camping within the community again, once all the opportunities are maximized with the interim housing, the campgrounds, and Marmot Meadows, and there's still going to be some people that are going to be kind of not filled in, and there's going to be a gap. And I've been approached by a few already that are saying, like, if we can't get a campground, could I camp in my friend's driveway kind of thing, or is the municipality going to open up the street again like we did when we were first returning back from the evacuation? So those questions that are out there, I'm just letting you know that there are some vulnerable people working in the community right now that are going to be looking for opportunities, and we're neither here nor there yet for approaching that, right? Because we have to kind of see where everybody filters in. I guess through you, your worship, to maybe Mr. Fark or CEO Given.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Demoto. I'm happy to answer to that. So the Parks Canada intends to release information imminently on the availability of campsites and the process for reserving those. So you can expect that that process will be made public and that information will be made public very, very soon. So that will be positive. That will allow people to have certainty and plan and make their reservations. In discussions within MOJ and JRCC, the intent is not to allow on-street parking, camping, again, over the summer season. And the reason for that is because it would be an extremely difficult scenario to regulate and to manage, because it would be difficult to differentiate between visitors coming in and parking on the street and residents. Having said that, there has been discussions with Parks Canada, and we are looking for, again, flexible solutions. So the scenario that you described, what has been discussed with Parks is that if there is a total lost property of which the debris has been removed and it is suitable, the confirmatory sampling has come back and it is suitable. There are scenarios where they will entertain allowing temporary accommodation on those properties. They have to be permitted, they have to go through the permitting process, but they will also have to meet certain conditions. So they have to be essentially self-sufficient. So that means utility tie-in of some kind, or at the very least electrical, and then the ability to drive in and drive out for water and wastewater. The reason for that is because, for example, they would not permit generators or the use of generators on those sites. So there will be a limited number of sites for which that is viable, but should those sites materialize and property owners or leaseholders choose to try to avail themselves of that, Parks has indicated a willingness to evaluate those on an application on a permit by permit basis.
Well, that's good to hear. And then I guess along the same vein, properties, people that do have properties in the community that have like let's just use for an example, a rear driveway and a camper there. Is there an opportunity for someone to get a roof over their head by camping out in their friend's backyard, so to speak? Is there an application process potentially for those that, might want to offer that to people that are exposed and don't have a place to live?
So I would again look to CEO Given, as I believe that would fall, because it's on an existing property in which it is already residing, that would fall under the municipal responsibility. Having said that, I would expect that the same conditions would have to apply, in that they any such accommodation would need to be self-sufficient to the extent that it does not create a nuisance for neighboring properties, no use of generators, that type of thing would be the minimum conditions, but I would defer to CAO given.
Yeah, thanks very much, Director Park. And I think that people living in RVs on undamaged properties, I think is the essence of your question. That's an opportunity that is much easier to address than some of the other ones. And so at this time, administration's, I think, broadly putting most of our effort in the harder to address situations that have the higher potential yield. That's one that we can take back and look and see if there are any bylaws that might prohibit that or any other things that we might not expect. We certainly are supportive of infill development. And we'll be talking about the housing engagement plan later on. And as council knows, with the Housing Accelerator Fund, administration is looking forward to working with the community role programs to incent and encourage additional infill development, but more likely of the more permanent kind. But totally appreciated that, RVs on undamaged lots, where the leaseholder and the neighbors are open to that is an option and an opportunity. There may be some steps that we'd have to go through to make that, to actually be able to activate that.
All right, and I guess the way to stay informed is me working through you with administration, and if they come forward to just, where do I point them in the time being? Or we just wait for that process to become available potentially, because I'm gonna get asked that, so.
Yeah, your worship, for Mayor, for Councillor Demota, I think, so there isn't a process to refer people to at this time. You can say, certainly this is something that administration is aware of. And if and when we're able to launch a process or, sort of invite people to do that, or if we make any policy or regulatory changes, that's something that, would be publicly announced and broadly shared so that everybody would be aware.
All right, thank you. And I don't mean to waste a lot of council's time, but I know that I'm probably speaking to maybe a couple handfuls of people in the community. When the survey came out for the needs, some people weren't aware that their landlord might be taking back the house where the landlord's lost their primary dwelling, and a few people have been displaced, and there was no way to address that on the survey. So there are a few, some of them, thankfully enough, people that have come to me and talked to me have been able to take care of themselves temporarily, but I'm just trying to find ways to help them out, and those are some of the gaps that have been asked. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Director Park, just so I'm understanding this clearly, a resident who lost their property could potentially park their travel trailer on it?
Yes, Councillor Hall, the discussion with Parks Canada has been that if it's a total loss property, especially if the intent is not to rebuild it necessarily in the first season, as long as certain conditions are met, Parks is willing to examine that on basically a permit application basis. Having said that, of course, residents need to understand that it would be the same people reviewing those permit applications as it would be reviewing the development applications and the building permit applications. So it speaks to the overall volume of work, but that is something that they have expressed a willingness to consider, as long as it is of a temporary nature. What they would not want to see is the movement of what could be considered as permanent looking homes that would land on the properties and then potentially never go away or turn into an enforcement challenge at a later date.
And to follow up, so a few of my neighbors in the R4 zone who will be getting new modulars at some point potentially have space on their property to put their travel trailer as the modular comes in. Like it wouldn't get in the way. Would that then probably follow the regulations around how much, like a carriage home can only take up, or your home and your carriage home can only take up 50%? Like, would it be all that process as well?
So once again, I would encourage them to actually reach out directly to the planning department and to have those discussions in advance because it will be site specific.
Thank you.
Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Fark. I wanted to express appreciation for the call for information regarding the rental rates and rental agreements. I think that clearly communicates to the public that we are aware that that there are situations occurring that are distressing to individual residents. And it is a great venue to gather the information so we have a clear picture of what actually is going on. So I wanted to express appreciation for that. And from other residents who will probably feel heard that that situation is going on.
With council's indulgence, I have one further set of questions specific to social recovery and the recovery pathfinders. Could you just speak for generally to that program? You've indicated that the first cohort will complete their 5-part training later this month. Could you just confirm the size of that cohort? Who it might be composed of, what that training consists of, and what the next 2 cohorts might look like. And I'll take this opportunity to express appreciation to the Jasper Rotary Club for providing the seed grant to get that going, and recognizing that you're looking for another funder to support the full scope of that program. I think more public awareness of what that program can do for social recovery might aid in getting that funding that you're looking for.
Mayor Allen, for the question, certainly. Just give me one moment. I'm going to bring up some of the details of that program. So the first cohort was, I believe, 8 to 10 people. And the focus for that first cohort was on frontline workers who would be dealing already with members of the community. So we had some of the urban planning, urban design and standards team. We had members from COS and a few other key focal points. Some of our protective services folks who were involved in that. They were the first cohort. And yes, indeed, they have now finished that initial training. And then the intention is to run similar sizes, 8 to 10 again for the next couple of months. In terms of the modules, so we have the peer-to-peer support, which is the first module. We have mental health first aid. It was the second module. Third module was question, persuade, refer. So this is about the ability to refer vulnerable individuals to the specific system or support that is available to them. There is a nonviolent crisis intervention module that was most appropriate for this first cohort. It is most likely that is the one that we will remove for the future cohorts because it's less relevant as they are less intended to be frontline workers. And then the fifth module was the navigating recovery processes. So this was very much around the challenges with insurance companies, managing with contractors, development permits, etc. So those are the 5 modules that were currently there. Again, one is likely to be removed and then potentially replaced. We are working with the Indigenous partners to look at potentially incorporating a recovery and healing through Indigenous practice module as a potential component on a going forward basis. I think I've answered your question, but if there's a component I've missed, please let me know.
You've answered it well, but just for clarity for myself and potentially for others, the intent then is maybe not a certification program, but a training program for people who are already engaged in the public to better enable them to respond to public inquiries and help members of the public with issues navigate a really complex situation.
That is correct. And it's not just necessarily frontline workers, it is the natural supports within the community. So it could include faith leaders, it could include individuals involved in certain aspects of sport or leisure, like those who would be the natural supports within the community, many of whom are frontline workers, but not exclusively.
Go ahead, Mr.
Your Worship, if I may, just to supplement Director Fark's question, I think that the simplest way to describe the program is an intention to expand the network of people in Jasper who can provide supports to their peers in the community. You know, there are a lot of people, exactly, I mean, you know, Councillor Devoto just put his hand up, and I know council members are being called on in a lot of ways with a lot of questions from residents. And so you are a support to residents. I know some council members have taken the first cohort, training. But there's also a lot of other people that have a lot of discussions with their friends and neighbors. And the intent of the Pathfinders program is to provide the education and knowledge about recovery. You know, the systems that are placed here in Jasper, as well as sort of the broad systems that are out there, so that Jasperites of all different backgrounds are trained to be effective supports to their friends and neighbors. That's probably the simplest way to describe the program. It's a training course to enable Jasperites to be effective supports to one another. We're not gonna be able to train everybody, but we know that there are those connectors in the community that if they have the right knowledge, they'll be able to share it and guide and support others in the community effectively.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and I am part of the first cohort in the Pathfinders program. We actually have our final session tomorrow morning. That's the navigating supports, but it's exactly what both of you have described.
Councillor Waxer.
Sorry, one quick question through you, Mayor Ireland, to Director Park. Once the training is completed, is there an ongoing commitment to being part of a network of people, or is it just you finish the training and off you go?
So no, the intent is that there is an ongoing program that is supportive and that, you know, we are looking for a funding source currently to support the full scope of the program, which includes some incentives and per diems for those who are involved, and additional training on an ongoing basis. So it is meant to be a comprehensive program over a continuing period of time, of which those who go through it continue to receive support to give the support that they are providing. And I would further add, just going back to Councillor Demoto's earlier point, again, Councillor Demoto, there is no concern with challenging questions coming our way. That is our role as administration, and similar for other members of council, we welcome those difficult questions because they help us to understand where are the points of concern and friction within the community, and it best allows us to address those. So please don't ever shy away from asking us difficult questions.
Councillor Devoto.
And I appreciate that. I just wanted to say sometimes through just, you know, being naive to the process, and personally, I felt that I could somewhat come across as being offensive, you know, and that's never my intention. So I appreciate that you're open and understanding to that. But again, while we're on the topic, and CEO given made the comments about, you know, all of us working together and making reference to council again, you know, I'm not prescribing anything personally, but I think for the next council that comes in, they'd be well set up if they went through some type of you know, social engagement training. You know, so that if we have new people that are coming on, that they're going to be ready to deal with some of the harsher and more difficult processes that councillors have to face and work with people in our community. And I know that we've all been doing really well, and we lean on each other. And whenever we have some difficulty, like, we're there for each other, which I think is great. But you know, it's going to be a tough few years coming out of this, and I think if they're going to be new people, they're going to, I think, benefit from help in navigating some of the tougher stuff. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for Director Park? If not, I would look for, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor,
Nope,
or
just
you're going to
motion.
make the motion, okay? Go to it.
I make the motion that council receive the JRCC report for information.
Thank you for that motion. Is there any debate? All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Director Park, for that report. It is now 3:10. Probably time for a bit of a break. We have a bit of an agenda yet to get through. I think we will need to refresh ourselves to push on, so I will call a 10-minute recess and we will reconvene at 3:20. Thank you all. It is 3:20. I will call us back into session. We are at agenda item 6.3, interim space for non-public facing businesses. And I believe, subject to correction from administration, that is really just to get us to third reading of bylaw number 267, for which we have received certification from Parks Canada. And so is there a member of council prepared to make a motion that council read for the third and final time bylaw number 267, being the bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to repeal a bylaw for the regulation and control of municipal storage lots? Councillor Keller MP, thank you for that. Is there any debate on that motion? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.4, Housing Accelerator Fund and Housing Action Plan. And for that, Belche is here again, as she was a week ago to present this. If you wish to present, go ahead. Otherwise, I will just call on councillors for any further questions that might have arisen since you presented to us a week ago.
Mayor Island, I'm comfortable with, Mayor Island, I'm comfortable with, accepting additional questions from council.
Mayor Island, I'm comfortable with either presenting or accepting additional questions from council.
All right, thank you very much. Again, for councillors, we reviewed this at committee of the whole a week ago, the RFP and the attached documents, including the overview and the proposed housing plan. Are there any further questions for Ms. Belche or for administration? Councillor Demota.
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to, through you to Ms. Belche, to thank her. Thank you for all your efforts and everything. I don't think that there's not enough praise for you in the community for the amount of attention and work that you put behind your portfolio and really help, use the term accelerate housing in our community. And I think without your knowledge, your experience, and your dedication, we wouldn't be where we are today, at least not as advanced as we are. So I really appreciate everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further from councillors? Deputy Mayor Mellon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Belche, is there a timeline for when the process, how to apply for these funds by residents will be coming out? Great information in here, but I don't know when it's going to be available for residents.
Through Mayor Island to Deputy Mayor Melnick, we are currently working on the program details for some of the initiatives that specifically allow us to provide funds to residents. Not all initiatives do, but certainly there are some that will benefit residents that way. We're looking for mid-April to beginning of May for that to appear before council with the program details, methods for people to apply, eligibility, and then we will do a social media blitz to advertise that to the public at large and begin receiving applications.
Thank you. Appreciate the detailed answer.
In the absence of other hands, I had a couple of questions. not necessarily germane to the plan itself, but some of the underlying documentation, particularly around labor. I'm looking for the reference in the report, but there is a section that speaks of the segments of the labor supply in Jasper. And there is a graph, and now I've lost it, but it speaks to accommodation, arts and entertainment and retail. That doesn't speak to food and beverage, which I would have thought would be the preponderance with accommodation in our community. And again, not that it makes any significant difference to the plan, but if we have a document out there, it is possible that could help us in other avenues when we advocate on behalf of the town, and identifying components of our labor force seems to me to have some relevance in lots of fields. And so I just wonder where food and beverage might land, because it doesn't land easily in arts and entertainment, and it doesn't land, from my perspective, in accommodation. So can you speak how those numbers came about?
Mayor Allen, thank you for the question. So that data is compiled from the 2021 census, recognizing it would be ideal if we had post-COVID data. I did look into that myself, and the food and beverage is included in the entertainment data.
All right, I appreciate that. And again, when we're dealing with the province, one of the things that allows us to distinguish the mountain park communities from others is preponderance of employment in food and beverage, which wouldn't normally be in entertainment, but I appreciate that. The other issue that struck me, and again, I've got to find the reference, but there is a reference to living wage and some comparisons based on median salary. And again, is it median salary used because that is something that is identified in Stats Canada documents as opposed to, say, average salary? Because it seems to me, at least, that median income by family tends to overstate the case for income earners in our community, hence the wide disparity between living wage and actual wage. So can you speak at all to that issue?
Mayor Ireland, again, all of the data sets were from the 2021 census. That is what they used to calculate the core individuals in core housing need. I did reach out to a colleague on the MOJ who is very versed in statistics, Mr. Althoff, and he did confirm that when we're looking at these kinds of statistics, a median, using the median actually presents better data than using the average. The living wage is calculated by the Living Wage Network, which is an organization here in Alberta. That is 2024. That was just recently completed, so I can say that that is absolutely up-to-date information. Noted in the Housing Action Plan is that Jasper currently has the highest living wage of all 21 communities that participated at $31 an hour.
All right, thank you for that. I was just curious about how those numbers get in, but I understand that there's source documents that you have to use, and particularly because this is a federal program, it makes sense to use the numbers that come to us through StatsCan. I had no further questions with respect to the document. I did give it a relatively thorough read. There are some, I think, grammatical and typographical issues that I won't take everybody's time with, but I would like an opportunity, assuming that council may approve the plan, to actually go through some of those really minor corrections before it gets put out in its final form.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Ireland. It is in draft form right now, and I'm happy to take that and do a final review and have it formatted for distribution.
Thank you for that. Other questions from councillors for Ms. Belcher? Is there a councillor prepared to make the motion? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I would make the motion that council approve the Jasper Housing Action Plan dated March 11th, 2025.
Thank you for that. Any debate on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And thank you very much, Ms. Belcher. I can only echo Councillor Demota's praise for the really fine work that you've done on this topic and housing generally. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That takes us to agenda item 6.5, residential density and parking community engagement approach. Might I assume that Director Sanders is dealing with that, or if we haven't resolved the audio issue, maybe that falls upwards to CAO Given. Defies gravity, goes up.
Shall we do a sound check, Mayor Ireland?
Well, that worked well, so carry on.
Okay. Much like Ms. Pelche, this was in front of you last week at committee of the whole. Oh, no. I'm happy to take questions, or Leanne can.
Yeah, Director Sanders, I'll maybe jump in. Director Sanders and I were conversing during the break, and she said that others maybe can hear her online clearly, maybe so the fault may be on our end here in the council chambers. But in any case, last week council did receive the attached community engagement approach. This arrives as a result of the natural work of the Urban Design and Standards Department, as well as a referral recommendation from the Recovery Advisory Committee. And so it is directly related to one of the topics coming from the Recovery Advisory Committee, as council saw last week. But the department has a comprehensive plan for community engagement on town values, as well as reviewing the changes to the land use policy that were made last fall. And so administration is proposing a community engagement process and approach. It was reviewed by committee last week, and we're looking for formal council acknowledgement of this recommendation from administration.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Are there any further questions of administration from councillors? Councillor Wilson?
I think there are none, so I would make the motion that council receive the attached community engagement approach for identifying town values and reviewing residential density and parking policies and land use policy, April to July 2025 as information.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Wilson. Just for clarity, Mr. Given, if the council approves that motion to accept it for information, do we take it that it will unfold as presented?
Mayor Ireland, yes, I know it's a little bit of an odd framing for the motion, but administration, this could have just as easily been administration just heading out to go and do this kind of work without really need for council direction or approval. We did want to ensure, given the high level of sort of touch points that there would be with the community through this, and where the community is in overall recovery, the council had explicit knowledge of the intention of administration here. And so that's why we're asking for council at this level to receive it as information, sort of acknowledging that you've seen this, that you've been informed by administration, and that if you had any other direction, you would have let us know and told us to work a different direction or at a different pace. I think council's acknowledgement here is well, it's not, well, we didn't need approval from council to go and do this kind of public engagement. We did certainly want your acknowledgement of our plans. And that's why the motion is framed the way that it is. And yes, we would act on this plan once council demonstrates its concurrence.
Thank you. Given Deputy Mayor Mellon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just with that bit more explanation, when we're be engaging in April and May, and we're producing the What We Heard reports, if we are clearly hearing something in the What We Heard reports, will we incorporate those more currently, or will we use the information we'll be gathering as part of the baseline for the town plan development in 2026? Just wondering if these there may be things that may come up where the public might express confusion, seek additional information, or clearly let us know what the opinion is.
I'm going to work from Director Sanders' notes, if it's okay, Mayor Ireland and Director Sanders. Appreciate being so well briefed on this. So, Councillor Melnick, thanks for the question. It is actually, quite a tight timeline. So there is not a large gap between when we're hearing things from the public, when we're repeating back to the public what we believe we heard, which is the intent of a What We Heard report. Maybe many of us have experienced those public engagement processes where you participate, and then down the road something else happens, and it's never quite clear, what influenced the decision or whether you were heard or not. So that what we heard is explicitly that. Here's what we heard from people who participated. But those engagement opportunities, the three different ones that administration is proposing, would all lead to council RFDs. So it's actually a pretty condensed timeline. So there's not a large gap from when people say things to when we go back out to them and say, here's what we think we heard you say. And here are the recommended actions arising from what you said. That will take place from that sort of April when engagement starts to June of this year when we bring recommendations to council based on engagement. So the administration doesn't believe that there's a large gap there. Anything that arises, we should be able to act on quite quickly. And many of the other things that we're engaging on are intended to be building blocks for future work as well.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask the question and appreciate the answer.
Are there other questions? Sorry, we had the motion from Councillor Wilson already, so not questions, but debate. And if there is not debate, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.6, housing manager position. Again, a matter that went to committee of the whole a week ago and comes before council by way of recommendation from committee of the whole. Any further questions for administration regarding the housing manager position? And if not, I would invite a councillor to make the motion. Councillor Waxer.
Make the motion that council approve the establishment of a housing manager position to create, oversee, and implement the municipality of Jasper's housing programs.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Is there any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.7, 2024 property tax receivable write-off request for roll number 500,000. that we have seen previously. Again, here by way of recommendation from committee of the whole. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion here? Councillor Wilson, thank you. That motion is that council direct administration to write off property tax receivable for roll 500,000 provincial building for half of the amount levied in the amount of $35,136.62. Is there any debate? Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 7, notices of motion, of which there are none on the agenda. Is there any councillor wish to raise anything in advance for future meeting? All right, we will go to agenda item 8, councillor reports. Are there any matters for councillors to report to their colleagues? Deputy Mayor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wish to report that on Saturday, I had an opportunity to represent the municipality for the thermal, for a group that was here called the Thermal Insulators Association of Alberta. They actually returned here. They were here last year, and typically this particular event rotates around ski resorts in BC and Alberta. But they chose to return here to support us in our recovery. As well, last week I attended the board meeting for the Jasper Yellowhead Historical Society, and we had occasions to have a couple of meetings with the HR committee.
Thank you for that report. Are there other reports? I will report briefly that last Thursday I attended a meeting of the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority Board, and I think I circulated to council some particulars of debris that has been removed from Jasper and made its way to the regional landfill in Hinton. And I just thought it of interest to councillors and potentially to members of the public to share those numbers. And now I can't put my finger on them, but I think I circulated that to the Acorn as well, so that can become part of the record. But in general terms, I know the one number that stuck out in my mind was so far, and with about 50% of the lots cleared of debris, we have contributed just over 20,000 metric tons to the landfill. Some waste has gone to other landfills other than the Hinton or the regional landfill. So it is significant, and there will be more, and then there will be construction waste as well. So it certainly has an impact, but the Regional Waste Management Board was prepared for that, and we are able to accommodate that increased volume. But it's just interesting to keep a perspective on the amount of debris that's leaving the community. And that is my report. If there are no other reports, we have a list of upcoming events. Agenda item 9, NETMA returning tomorrow, half hour earlier than usual, at Papa George's Restaurant. The Jasper Pride and Ski Festival approaching April 4th, and as we heard earlier today, flag raising sometime on April 4th, usually around 11 o'clock, but I won't commit to that. National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, also known as Red Dress Day on May 5th, and the FCM Annual Conference and Trade Show in Ottawa May 29th to June 1st. Are there any other matters coming up that could be brought to the attention of council generally? Yeah, I mentioned earlier today, I believe Councillor and I have been invited to a meeting this evening at the Activity Center multipurpose hall of the Métis Nation, at least as representing Jasper House Métis District. So we will attend them. Very glad tidings on behalf of council and the municipality. If there is nothing further with respect to upcoming events,
Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Waxer.
Yes, so next week, as a follow-up to a previous time, I will be attending Alberta Health Services community consultation session. I attended it probably about a year ago, and so I received a follow-up invitation. And this time it'll be on 26th in the activity center.
Thank you for that. That takes us then to agenda item 10. We have now 4 matters for an in-camera session. Is there anyone who is responsible for having one of these on our agenda that thinks that there might be council action flowing from whatever we hear in camera for later today? I see shakes of the head rather than nods of the head. All right, before I call a motion in to go in camera, I will thank those who attended in person in the forum room today or on our Zoom platform. Thank you very much for your attendance. I will let you know that we are about to move in camera. When we come back into open session, it will be for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting only, and no further business will be conducted. So again, thank you all, and I would invite a motion from a councillor that we move in camera at 3:47 p.m. Councillor Calarampy, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We shall move in camera, and when we come out to open session, it will be for the purposes of adjournment only. So thank you everybody for your attention to it.